The Vulcan exploration craft plummeted through the stormy alien skies, flames bursting from shattered hull plates, as ruptured power conduits spewed showers of sparks across the bridge, the panicked crew desperately fighting to avoid a fatal crash on the deadly surface of uncharted planet Zeta 9. Joshua Jones, Earth's top survival expert, gripped his harness straps tightly as the crippled ship shook violently. The Vulcans had recruited him for this mission, impressed by his wilderness skills, but he'd never imagined he'd be fighting for his life alongside them on a hostile alien world. The ship's systems failed one by one, artificial gravity cutting out, the hull groaning as the extreme forces of re-entry tore at the superstructure. The pilots struggled with rapidly degrading controls, trying to level out their descent vector. With an ear-splitting screech of rending metal, a large section of the outer hull peeled away. "Brace for impact," Captain Spiker yelled. Seconds later, the ship slammed into the surface with a thunderous crash, ploughing a massive furrow into the rocky soil, shearing away the remaining hull plates in an avalanche of twisted debris until it finally ground to a halt, a battered, barely recognizable wreck. Joshua hit the quick release on his harness, dropping to the floor of the sideways-oriented bridge, joined by the other crew. "Status report," Speaker croaked, green Vulcan blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Main power offline. Impulse and warp drives destroyed. Hull breaches on all decks. Environmental systems failing," the science officer rattled off grimly. "Captain, over 80% of our supplies were in the aft cargo bay. That section was completely destroyed in the crash." Speaker slammed a fist into the buckled bulkhead. The advanced Vulcan technology they relied on had failed them. Now they were stranded on an uncharted death world with few supplies. No food, no shelter, no way to call for help. Joshua peered out a shattered viewport at the alien landscape. Deep purple vegetation beneath roiling green clouds, flashes of lightning flickering on the horizon. He'd never encountered anything like it. But one fact was clear. Without the skills to survive here, they'd all be dead within days. The Vulcans may have been expert deep space explorers, but in this perilous situation, their technological prowess alone wasn't going to save them. Joshua knew this crew's lives would depend on the primitive wilderness techniques they'd so casually dismissed. The survivalist grimly shouldered his gear pack, knowing the fight for survival had just begun. As the sun rose over the alien landscape, painting the sky in vivid hues of orange and purple, Joshua shouldered his makeshift spear and set out from the crash site with Tarek close behind. The young Vulcan's eyes shone with eagerness, his usually stoic face betraying a hint of excitement at the prospect of learning from the human survivalist. They trekked through the dense undergrowth, Joshua pointing out edible plants and natural signs of potential prey. Tarek absorbed the information like a sponge, his sharp mind committing every detail to memory. Suddenly a chilling roar echoed through the forest, freezing them in their tracks. Joshua motioned for Tarek to stay low as he scanned the surroundings, every muscle tensed and ready for action. A massive creature burst through the foliage, its mottled green hide rippling over powerful muscles, razor-sharp claws gouging deep furrows in the earth. It fixed its baleful yellow eyes on the two hunters, letting out another ear-splitting roar. Joshua had faced many predators in his career, but none like this. He gripped his spear tightly, placing himself between Tarek and the beast. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice steady, despite the fear coursing through his veins. The creature lunged, faster than anything that size had a right to be. Joshua shoved Tarek aside and rolled, narrowly avoiding a swipe of its claws. He came up on one knee, driving his spear into the beast's flank. It howled in pain and fury, whirling to face him. Joshua barely had time to register the blow before he was flying through the air, searing agony erupting in his chest as the creature's claws found their mark. He slammed into a tree, his vision swimming, the taste of copper flooding his mouth. Through the haze of pain, he saw the beast stalking toward Tarek, who stood frozen in terror. With a grunt of effort, Joshua staggered to his feet, scooping up a rock and hurling it at the creature's head. Fate whirled on him, snarling, and he led it away from Tarek, his mind racing. He spotted a tangle of vines overhead, and an idea formed. As the beast charged, he leaped for the vines, swinging out of reach. The creature slammed into the tree, momentarily stunned. Joshua dropped down onto its back, driving his spear deep into its neck. It thrashed and bucked, but he held on, twisting the spear, until with a final shudder, the beast fell still. Joshua managed a weak grin, all in a day's work. Then the darkness claimed him. Back at the camp, Spiker paced restlessly, his brow furrowed. The pitted remains of Vulcan technology were strewn across makeshift workbenches, the other crew members elbow-deep in circuitry and wiring. "Boost the signal again," Spiker ordered, peering over the communications officer's shoulder. The officer complied, fingers flying over the rebuilt console. Static crackled, then dedicationed into a faint voice. "Can outpost receiving weak signal." Spiker leaned forward, hope warring with frustration on his face. "This is Captain Spiker of the exploration craft Tevela. We have crash-landed on an uncharted planet and require immediate assistance. Do you read me?" A long pause, then. "Tevela, receiving car location, unknown, general vicinity." Spiker slammed a hand down on the console. So close, but still not enough. He keyed the mic again. "Please dispatch a rescue team to our approximate location. We have injured crew and limited supplies." "I confirm. Rescue team dispatched. May take weeks. Search area." The transmission dissolved into static once more. Spiker closed his eyes, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Weeks. They had to hold out for weeks on this hostile world. He turned to find Joshua, pale and bandaged, leaning against the entrance with Tarek's support. The human's face was grim, but determined. "I heard," Joshua said, his voice rough with pain. "We need to signal our exact position, and I know how." "Very well," he said at last. "We'll follow your lead, Joshua. Assign teams to gather materials." He met the human's eyes, respect and gratitude warring with the ingrained Vulcan reserve. "Your expertise may just save us all." As the crew set to work, Joshua leaned heavily on Tarek, his wounds sapping his strength. The young Vulcan helped him to a seat, his face troubled. "Why did you risk your life for me?" Tarek asked softly. "It is not logical." Joshua managed a chuckle, then winced as pain lanced through his chest. "Humans have a saying, Tarek. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Logical? Maybe not. But it's what we do. Tarek looked away, confusion and something deeper warring on his face. Vulcans do not speak of love or friendship. It is a weakness. Tarek fell silent, and Joshua could practically see the gears turning behind his eyes. They had bridged the gap between their species with actions, but there was still so much to learn from each other. Their thoughts were interrupted by a shout from the far side of the camp. One of the Vulcans came running, his face ashen. "Captain! The fungus! It's in the food stores!" Spiker was moving before the sentence was finished. Joshua and Tarek close on his heels. They reached the supply tent to find a scene out of a nightmare. The carefully rationed food was covered in a thick, spongy growth, pulsing obscenely in hues of sickly grey and green. It had spread over the crates and barrels like a hideous web, tendrils burrowing into the contents. "Destroy it," Spiker commanded. "Isolate any untainted supplies and burn the rest." The crew leaped into action, steadfast perseverance etched on every face. They worked tirelessly, Joshua directing the disposal efforts, while Spiker coordinated the search for new food sources. The crisis forced them to work as a seamless unit, the last barriers between human and Vulcan crumbling in the face of a common foe. Side by side, they fought to survive, to cling to hope in the face of dwindling odds. And through it all, Joshua and Tarek grew closer, the young Vulcan's doubts and questions, finding a ready ear in the human who had so much to teach about embracing life in all its messy glory. In the end, they stood together, the bonfire reaching towards the sky like a beacon of defiance against an uncaring universe. All eyes turned upwards, searching for a sign, a glimmer of hope amidst the stars. The distant hum of engines grew louder, piercing through the alien atmosphere. Joshua's heart raced as he spotted the rescue ship descending towards their position. The Vulcans gathered around, their usual stoic expressions betraying hints of relief. "We're saved," Tarek breathed, a rare smile crossing his face. But their joy was short-lived. A massive shadow fell over the landscape as an enormous vessel materialized above them. Before anyone could react, blinding beams of energy lanced out, striking the rescue ship. The smaller craft shuddered, then exploded in a spectacular fireball. "No!" Joshua yelled, shielding his eyes as burning wreckage rained down around them. The crew scattered, dodging flaming chunks of metal. As the dust settled, Joshua and Speaker ventured out to survey the destruction. Among the twisted debris, they found a lone survivor, a badly injured Vulcan. "Help me get him to shelter," Speaker ordered. They carried the wounded man back to their camp, where Sarun immediately began treating his injuries. "I am Arix," the survivor croaked. "The ship that attacked us, Zorgons." Joshua frowned. "Who are the Zorgons?" Arix winced as Sarun cleaned a nasty gash on his arm. "A hostile race? Conquerors? Slavers? They've been tracking our rescue efforts, hoping to find you and your advanced technology. They believe it will give them an edge in their war against the Galactic Alliance." Speaker's expression darkened. "We cannot allow them to find us or our ship. The consequences would be catastrophic." Joshua nodded grimly. "We need a plan, fast." After a heated debate, they settled on a risky strategy. Joshua would lead a small team to create diversions and false trails, while Speaker and the others focused on repairing their crashed ship. "Be careful out there," Speaker said as Joshua prepared to leave. "The fate of many worlds may rest on our success." Joshua, Tarek, and 2 other Vulcans set out into the alien wilderness. They trudged through thick underbrush, scaled treacherous cliffs, and forded icy streams. At each location, they created elaborate decoy camps, false trails, and clever traps designed to slow and confuse their pursuers. Meanwhile, back at the crash site, Speaker and his team worked frantically to repair their vessel. They salvaged parts from the rescue ship's wreckage, jury-rigging systems, and patching hull breaches. "Sarun, reroute power to the starboard nacelle," Spicer called out. Sparks flew as Sarun made the connection, causing a sudden power surge. "Overload," Sarun yelled. "The core's going critical." As days passed, Joshua's team pushed deeper into unexplored territory. They crested a rocky ridge and found themselves staring at an incredible sight, the crumbling ruins of an ancient alien city nestled in a hidden valley. Deep within the heart of the city, they discovered a chamber housing a strange crystalline object, pulsing with otherworldly energy. "This could be a weapon against the Zorgons," Joshua said, reaching for the artifact. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, the chamber erupted in blinding light. Klaxons blared as hidden mechanisms whirred to life. "We've triggered some kind of security system," Tarek shouted over the din. Outside, they heard the ominous whine of approaching Zorgon ships. They were trapped. Back at the crash site, Speaker's team had finally achieved a major breakthrough. The ship's engines roared to life, systems coming online one by one. Their triumph was short-lived as they realized Joshua and the others were still out there, now in grave danger. Speaker knew they couldn't leave without them. As Joshua and his team huddled in the ancient alien chamber, surrounded by encroaching Zorgon forces, Spiker's hastily repaired ship lifted off, racing against time to save their friends, and possibly the entire Galactic Alliance from a terrible fate. The Vulcan ship streaked through the alien sky, engines straining as Speaker pushed them to their limits. Joshua gripped his seat, heart pounding as they approached the ancient ruins. Through the viewscreen, he saw Zorgon ships swarming like angry insects. "Weapons hot," Speaker ordered. "Target their engines and communication arrays." Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from the Vulcan vessel, striking the unsuspecting Zorgon ships. Explosions blossomed across their hulls as the element of surprise gave Speaker's crew the upper hand. "Now's our chance," Joshua said, leaping to his feet. "We need to get down there." The ship's teleporter hummed to life. depositing Joshua and a small team just outside the ruins. They sprinted through crumbling archways, dodging debris, as Zorgon troops scrambled to respond to the attack. "This way," Joshua called, leading them deeper into the complex. They found Tarek and the others huddled in the chamber with the artifact, its pulsing energy filling the air with an eerie glow. "Let's move," Joshua urged, hefting the artifact. They turned to flee, only to find their path blocked by a squad of Zorgon soldiers. Disruptor fire erupted around them. Joshua dove for cover, the artifact clutched tightly to his chest. He saw Tarek go down, a smoking wound in his side. "Tarek!" Joshua shouted. Without hesitation, he slung the Vulcan over his shoulder, somehow managing to keep hold of the artifact. They ran, Zorgon troops in hot pursuit. Joshua's lungs burned, his muscles screaming as he carried Tarek's dead weight. Blaster bolts sizzled past, scorching the ancient stone. The ship hovered just ahead. Its boarding ramp extended. Joshua summoned his last reserves of strength and sprinted up the ramp, collapsing to the deck as it slammed shut behind them. "Go!" he yelled hoarsely. The ship rocketed skyward, shuddering as Zorgon weapons fire impacted its shields. Joshua struggled to his feet, handing off the artifact to a waiting crewman before turning his attention to Tarek. "Hang in there," he murmured, applying pressure to the wound. Tarek's eyes fluttered open, unfocused with pain. Sarun appeared, medical kit in hand, and set to work on Tarek's injury. Joshua reluctantly stepped back, allowing the Vulcan healer room to work. On the bridge, alarms blared as a Zorgon fleet materialized around them. "Evasive maneuvers," Spiker barked. "Divert all available power to shields and weapons." The ship jerked and rolled, narrowly avoiding a barrage of enemy fire. Joshua stumbled to the weapons station, taking over for an injured crewman. "The artifact," he called out, "can we use it?" Speaker nodded sharply. "Engineering route the artifact's energy to our primary systems." The ship's lights flickered, then blazed brighter than ever. Joshua felt the weapons controls come alive under his hands, humming with newfound power. He targeted the nearest Zorgon vessel and fired. The results were spectacular. The enemy ship's shields collapsed instantly, its hull breaching in a dozen places before it exploded into a brilliant fireball. But for every Zorgon ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Alarms screamed as their shields began to fail under the relentless assault. "We can't keep this up," Speaker said grimly. Suddenly space itself seemed to tear open. A massive fleet of sleek advanced ships poured through the rift, their weapons blazing. "The Galactic Alliance," Speaker breathed, relief evident in his voice. The tide of battle turned in an instant. Caught between the Vulcan ship's enhanced weaponry and the overwhelming force of the Alliance fleet, the Zorgons broke ranks and fled. As the last enemy ship vanished into hyperspace, a stunned silence fell over the bridge. They'd done it. In a seemingly impossible way, they'd survived. In the days that followed, Joshua found himself hailed as a hero alongside Speaker and the Vulcan crew. The artifact was carefully studied by Alliance scientists, its secrets promising to turn the tide in the ongoing war with the Zorgons. Joshua visited Tarek in the medbay, relieved to see his friend on the road to recovery. "I've been thinking," Tarek said, his voice still weak but filled with newfound purpose. "I want to learn more about your way of life, Joshua, about humanity's resilience and adaptability." Joshua smiled, touched by the Vulcan's words. "Well, there's no better teacher than Earth itself. You're welcome to join me there if you'd like." Later, as Joshua prepared to return home, declining the Alliance's job offer, Speaker approached him with a long, slender case. "This belonged to my father," Spiker said, opening the case to reveal an intricately crafted Vulcan weapon. "I want you to have it, as a symbol of the bond forged between our peoples." Joshua accepted the gift, deeply moved. "Thank you, Speaker, for everything." The two clasped hands, Vulcan and human, their eyes conveying what words could not. As Joshua turned to board his transport, he knew that this adventure had changed him forever, opening up a universe of possibilities he never could have imagined. The Alaskan wilderness stretched out before Joshua Jones, a vast expanse of snow-capped mountains and dense forests. He stood on the porch of his isolated cabin, breath misting in the frigid air. The crunch of footsteps in snow broke the silence. Joshua's hand instinctively moved to the phaser at his hip, a relic from his past adventures. "Joshua," a familiar voice called out. "It's been too long, my friend." Tarek emerged from the tree line, his Vulcan features unchanged by the years. Joshua's eyes widened in surprise. The Vulcan's expression was grave. "I bring urgent news from the Galactic Alliance. May we speak inside?" In the warmth of the cabin, Tarek revealed the dire situation. "The Zorgons have developed a bioweapon capable of wiping out entire planets. Our only hope lies in finding an ancient Vulcan relic hidden on a rogue planet." Joshua paced the room, running a hand through his graying hair. "And you want me to help find it?" Joshua's eyes sharp. "I left that life behind, Tarek. I can't go back." Tarek leaned forward, his usually stoic demeanor cracking. "Billions of lives are at stake. Please, Joshua, for the sake of all we fought for before." Hours later, Joshua found himself aboard a sleek Alliance vessel, surrounded by a team of Vulcan operatives. Speaker, now sporting the insignia of a high-ranking officer, greeted him with a nod. "Welcome back, Joshua. I trust Tarek has briefed you on the mission." The ship dropped out of warp near the rogue planet. Through the viewscreen, Joshua saw a world of swirling storms and jagged terrain. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship bucked and shuddered. "Prepare for landing," Speaker ordered. "And be on alert. We don't know what's waiting for us down there." The moment they set foot on the planet's surface, Joshua's instincts screamed danger. Wind howled across a landscape of razor-sharp rock formations and deep crevasses. In the distance, something large and predatory screeched. "Let's move," Joshua said, adjusting his environment suit. "We need to find shelter before—" A blast of energy sizzled past his head. "Ambush!" Tarek yelled. Zorgan mercenaries poured from hidden positions, their weapons blazing. The team scattered, diving for cover behind rocky outcroppings. Joshua fired back, his shots finding their mark as years of training kicked in. In the chaos of the firefight, Joshua found himself cut off from the main group. Only Tarek and a young Vulcan he didn't recognize were with him. "This way," Joshua urged, spotting a narrow ravine. They sprinted for cover, energy blasts chipping away at the rocks around them. Once safely hidden, the young Vulcan introduced himself. "I am Vorak, xenoarchaeologist. It seems we are now stranded together." Joshua took stock of their supplies. "Not much to work with. We'll have to be smart about this." Vorak's eyebrow raised skeptically. "And how do you propose we proceed with your primitive methods?" "Those primitive methods have kept me alive this long," Joshua retorted. "Now let's figure out our next move before those Zorgon bastards find us." As they ventured deeper into the planet's unforgiving terrain, Joshua's bond with Tarek grew stronger. They reminisced about their past adventures, finding moments of levity in the face of danger. Vorak, initially dismissive of Joshua's approach, began to see the value in the human's resourcefulness. When a vicious predator ambushed them in a narrow canyon, it was Joshua's quick thinking and improvised weapon that saved them. Their search for the relic led them to the ruins of an ancient structure. As they deciphered the alien glyphs, a startling truth emerged. "This artifact," Vorak translated, his eyes wide, "it's not just a weapon. It's a key to understanding an entire civilization that predates even Vulcan history." Joshua examined the intricate carvings. "And you think this could help us defeat the Zorgons?" Before Vorak could answer, the ground shook with the impact of orbital bombardment. Through a gap in the ruins, they saw Alliance ships engaging a Zorgon fleet in the sky above. "Spiker," Tarek said, "he's come for us." As the battle raged overhead, Joshua and his companions raced towards the relic's hiding place. They knew the choice they faced could change the fate of the stars forever. The underground caverns echoed with the thunderous sounds of battle above. Joshua, Tarek, and Vorak sprinted through winding passages, their footsteps reverberating off ancient stone walls. The relic, clutched tightly in Joshua's hands, pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "We need to stop this madness," Joshua panted, skidding to a halt in a vast chamber. "It's now or never." Without hesitation, he activated the relic. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the artifact, surging outward in all directions. The cavern walls trembled as the wave passed through solid rock, racing towards the surface. Vorak's eyes widened in astonishment. "Fascinating. The energy signature is unlike anything I've ever encountered." As the wave dissipated, an eerie silence fell over them. The distant sounds of combat had ceased entirely. "Did it work?" Tarek asked, his voice hushed. Joshua closed his eyes, concentrating on the relic's power. A rush of sensations flooded his mind. He could feel the very fabric of space-time bending to his will. "It's more than we imagined," he breathed. "We can control time itself." With careful manipulation, they created a temporal field encompassing the battlefield above. Alliance and Zorgon forces alike stood frozen in place, locked in a moment of suspended animation. "We have a chance to end this," Joshua said, his eyes blazing with tenacity. "We need to get to Zargoth." After securing Alliance support, the trio made their way to the Zorgon flagship. They slipped past motionless guards and navigated through eerily silent corridors. In a dimly lit laboratory, they discovered the true horror of the Zorgon bioweapon. Holographic displays showed simulations of entire planets succumbing to a virulent plague. "By the gods," Vorak whispered, his usual stoic demeanor shaken, "the death toll would be incalculable." They pressed on, evading security systems and dispatching the few guards not caught in the temporal field. Finally, they stood before the imposing doors of Zargoth's throne room. Joshua squared his shoulders. "Remember, we offer him a chance to surrender, but be ready for anything." The doors slid open, revealing Zargoth seated upon a grotesque throne of twisted metal. The Zorgon leader's eyes narrowed as he beheld the intruders. "So the legends of the relic were true," Zargoth hissed. "I commend your resourcefulness, human." Joshua stepped forward. "It's over, Zargoth. Dismantle the bioweapon and surrender, or we'll use the relic's power to ensure you never threaten another world again." Zargoth's laughter was cold and cruel. "You think you can dictate terms to me?" His clawed hand slammed down on a concealed panel. "I would rather see everything burn." Alarms blared throughout the ship. A sickly green mist began seeping from hidden vents. They scrambled to don protective gear from their packs. Joshua's hands shook as he sealed his helmet, watching in horror as the mist spread rapidly through the throne room. "We need to find the source and shut it down," Joshua ordered. "Move." They raced through the ship's twisting corridors, the green mist growing thicker with each passing moment. Unconscious Zorgon crew members littered the halls, victims of their leader's madness. Suddenly Tarek stumbled. I don't feel right," he gasped, his voice weak. Joshua's heart clenched as he saw a tear in Tarek's protective suit. The virus had already taken hold. "We'll find a cure," Joshua promised, supporting his friend. "Just hold on." But Tarek's condition deteriorated rapidly. With anguish tearing at his heart, Joshua made the brutal decision to leave Tarek in a sealed chamber, hoping to contain the spread. "I'll come back for you," Joshua vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "I swear it." With Vorak at his side, Joshua pushed on. They finally reached the central chamber, where banks of ominous machinery hummed with deadly purpose. And there, slumped against a control panel, was Zargoth himself, delirious and dying from his own weapon. Joshua and Vorak exchanged a grim look. The ship's systems warned of imminent contamination. They had mere moments to act, but the choice before them seemed impossible. Joshua's hands moved swiftly over the relic's intricate surface, his fingers tracing patterns only he understood. The artifact pulsed with energy, responding to his touch. Vorak watched intently, his eyes wide with a mix of fascination and urgency. A wave of shimmering energy burst from the relic, enveloping the bioweapon chamber. The sickly green mist within froze mid-swirl, suspended in an eerie tableau. Joshua exhaled sharply, his shoulders sagging with relief. "It worked," Vorak said, his tone betraying a hint of awe. "The temporal field is holding." Without wasting a moment, Joshua sprinted back through the ship's corridors, his boots echoing on the metal floor. He reached the sealed chamber where he'd left Tarek, his heart pounding. The door hissed open, revealing his friend slumped against the wall. "Tarek," Joshua called, rushing to his side. "Can you hear me?" The Vulcan's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. "Joshua," he rasped, "the bioweapon." As they made their way through the ship, alarms began blaring. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow. Vorak's voice crackled over the comm system. "Joshua, Zargoth has activated the fleet's self-destruct sequence." Joshua's mind raced. He looked down at the relic still clutched in his free hand. "Not if I can help it," he muttered. They burst onto the bridge, where Zargoth hunched over a control panel, his movements erratic. The Zorgon leader's eyes were wild, his scales slick with sweat from the virus ravaging his system. "It's over," Zargoth snarled, spittle flying from his mouth. "We all burn together." Joshua raised the relic, focusing its power. Time seemed to slow around Zargoth, his movements becoming sluggish. With a final burst of energy, Joshua froze the Zorgon leader in place, his clawed hand suspended mere inches from the final detonation command. Panting heavily, Joshua staggered to the ship's main control interface. His fingers flew over the alien technology, years of experience guiding his actions. He opened a channel to the remaining Zorgon fleet. "This is Joshua Jones," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Your leader is defeated. Your bioweapon is neutralized. Surrender now, or share Zargoth's fate." Tense moments passed as Joshua waited for a response. Finally, the comm crackled to life with messages of capitulation from the Zorgon ships. In the days that followed, Joshua worked tirelessly alongside Alliance forces to secure the bioweapon and dismantle the Zorgon war machine. He watched as Vorak and a team of scientists pored over the relic, their excitement palpable as they unraveled its secrets. Tarek's recovery was slow but steady. As his strength returned, he sought out Joshua in a quiet corner of the Alliance ship. "I've been thinking," Tarek said, his voice still slightly weak, "about everything we've been through, about what I've learned from you." Joshua raised an eyebrow, waiting for his friend to continue. "Your adaptability, your resilience," Tarek went on, "even your emotions, which I once dismissed as a weakness. They're strengths, Joshua. I want to share these lessons with my people on Vulcan." Joshua nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. He reached for the relic which he'd kept close since their victory. With a deep breath, he held it out to Tarek. "Take it," Joshua said. "You and Vorak, this power, and it's too much for any one person or species. Guard it, keep it safe." Tarek's eyes widened as he accepted the artifact. "I understand," he said solemnly. "We will protect it with our lives." As the Alliance began the monumental task of dismantling the Zorgon threat, Speaker approached Joshua on the observation deck. The Vulcan commander stood tall, his uniform crisp and immaculate. Joshua gazed out at the stars, feeling the pull of adventure warring with a deeper longing. He turned back to Speaker, shaking his head. "I appreciate the offer," he said, "but I think it's time for me to head home, back to Earth." Understanding flickered in Speaker's eyes. He nodded, reaching out to clasp Joshua's hand in a firm shake. As Joshua prepared to board the transport that would take him back to his cabin in the Alaskan wilderness, Tarek approached. In his hands, he carried a long, slender object wrapped in cloth. "A parting gift," Tarek said, presenting the item to Joshua. Joshua unwrapped it, revealing a beautifully crafted Vulcan ritual blade. Its handle was inlaid with intricate designs, the blade itself shimmering with an otherworldly sheen. It symbolizes the bond between us, Tarek explained, between our cultures. Joshua's throat tightened with emotion as he accepted the blade. He looked at his Vulcan friends, at Speaker and Vorak standing nearby, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. As Joshua turned to board the transport, he carried with him the weight of their shared experiences, the memories of battles fought and won. He knew that somewhere out among the stars, the next adventure. The crisp Alaskan air bit at Joshua's lungs as he trudged through knee-deep snow. Years of solitude had sharpened his senses, attuning him to the rhythms of the wilderness. But tonight, something was different. A faint, high-pitched whine pierced the silence, growing louder with each passing second. Joshua's eyes widened as a streak of light cut across the night sky, plummeting towards the earth. The familiar Vulcan energy signature sent a jolt of adrenaline through his system. Without hesitation, he grabbed his survival pack and set off towards the crash site. The trek was arduous, icy winds whipping at his face as he navigated treacherous terrain. Hours passed before he crested a hill and saw the twisted wreckage of a Vulcan science vessel, steam rising from its ruptured hull. Joshua approached cautiously, his hand instinctively reaching for the Vulcan ritual blade at his hip. A figure stumbled from the wreckage, a young Vulcan woman, her green blood stark against the pristine snow. "I am Tirana," she said, her voice steady despite her injuries. "My crew, they did not survive the attack." Joshua helped her to shelter, tending to her wounds as she recounted the ambush by unknown hostiles. As they huddled near a makeshift fire, static crackled from Tirana's damaged communicator. Joshua's brow furrowed as he deciphered the coded Vulcan transmission. "A rogue planet," he muttered, "with an ancient alien ecosystem." Tirana's eyes widened. "That was our mission, but the transmission, there's more." They listened intently, their faces growing grim as the true nature of their attackers was revealed. Zorgon mercenaries, seeking to exploit the planet's resources for bioweapons. "We need to warn the Alliance," Joshua said, his expression resolute with purpose. They set out across the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness, each step a battle against the elements. Tirana's logical mind complemented Joshua's instincts as they navigated treacherous ice fields and dense forests. Days later they stumbled upon an unexpected sight, a derelict Zorgon shuttle, a relic from the previous conflict. Joshua's eyes glinted with a dangerous idea. "It's risky," Tirana cautioned as they approached the alien craft. "Sometimes you have to roll the hard six," Joshua replied, already working to bypass the shuttle's security systems. The engines roared to life and they blasted off towards the stars. But their journey was far from smooth. A massive asteroid field loomed before them, a deadly maze of spinning rocks and debris. Joshua's hands flew across the controls, weaving the shuttle through impossibly narrow gaps. Tirana called out sensor readings, her voice tight with tension as house-sized boulders scraped past their hull. They emerged from the asteroid field, battered but alive, only to face a new threat. A Zorgon raiding party bore down on them, weapons blazing. "Evasive maneuvers," Tirana shouted as Joshua pushed the shuttle to its limits. They outran their pursuers, finally reaching the rogue planet's orbit. Its surface was a patchwork of alien biomes, unlike anything they had ever seen. They established a hidden base camp, working tirelessly to map the planet's ecosystem while awaiting Alliance reinforcements. Their explorations led them to crumbling ruins, evidence of a long-dead civilization. As they delved deeper into the ancient structures, they uncovered technologies beyond their wildest imaginings, devices that seamlessly merged biological and technological components with implications that could reshape the galaxy. But with each discovery came a growing sense of unease. The ruins told a cautionary tale of a civilization undone by its own creations, unleashing forces they couldn't control. Time was running short. Zorgon ships would soon be upon them. Joshua and Tirana raced to download the vast repository of alien knowledge, their fingers flying across holographic interfaces. A distant explosion rocked the ruins. The Zorgons had found them. "We need to move," Joshua shouted, grabbing the data drives as they fled through crumbling corridors. They burst from the ruins just as Zorgon troops touched down, energy weapons scorching the earth where they had stood moments before. Tirana worked furiously to transmit the precious data to the approaching Alliance fleet, while Joshua provided covering fire. The skies above them erupted in chaos as the full might of the Zorgon armada emerged from the asteroid field. Alliance ships swooped in, engaging the Zorgons in a furious battle that lit up the alien sky. Joshua and Tirana found themselves caught in the crossfire, ducking for cover as energy beams and plasma torpedoes rained down around them. The ground shook violently as Joshua and Tirana sprinted through the ruins, narrowly avoiding a collapsing pillar. They ducked into a hidden crevice, the sounds of battle raging overhead. "In here," Joshua said, pushing aside an ancient stone panel to reveal a dark passage. They descended into the bowels of the planet, surrounded by alien architecture that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Tirana's tricorder chirped as she analyzed the data they'd retrieved. "Joshua, look at this," she said, her voice tight with urgency. He peered at the holographic display, his eyes widening as he took in the schematics of a massive weapon system. "A doomsday device," he breathed, "capable of unleashing devastating biomolecular forces." Tirana nodded grimly. "It appears to have been a last resort for the planet's original inhabitants." Joshua's mind raced, weighing their options as the sounds of battle grew more intense above them. He turned to Tirana, his face set with persistence. "We need to activate it," he said. "It's our only chance to stop the Zorgon invasion force." Tirana's eyebrows furrowed. "The consequences could be catastrophic. We have no way of controlling its effects on our own forces." Joshua paced the narrow corridor, his boots scuffing against the ancient floor. "If we don't act, the Zorgons will take control of this planet and its secrets. Billions will die from their bioweapons." Tirana closed her eyes, her logical mind wrestling with the enormity of the decision. After a long moment, she nodded. "Very well, let us proceed." They pushed deeper into the facility, navigating a maze of alien technology. Suddenly, a section of floor gave way beneath Joshua's feet. He plummeted into darkness, barely catching the edge of the pit with his fingertips. "Tirana!" he called out, his muscles straining. The Vulcan woman lunged forward, grasping his wrist and pulling him to safety. They lay on the floor, panting. "Security measures," Tirana observed, eyeing the pit warily. Joshua nodded, getting to his feet. "Stay alert, there's bound to be more." They pressed on, dodging energy fields and disabling ancient traps. Joshua's survival instincts kicked into overdrive as they navigated the treacherous environment. Finally, they reached a massive door covered in alien glyphs. Tirana's fingers flew over her tricorder, decoding the symbols. "This is it," she said, "the central control nexus." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a cavernous chamber dominated by a pulsing crystal structure. Holographic interfaces sprang to life as they approached. Joshua's hands hovered over the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a problem," he said, his voice heavy. "The weapon needs a massive bio-neural energy source to function." Tirana scanned the room, her face paling as she realized the implications. "Our own neural tissue is the only viable option." "We have to do this," he said, "for the Alliance, for everyone counting on us." Tirana nodded solemnly. They stepped onto circular platforms flanking the crystal structure. Energy tendrils snaked out, latching onto their bodies. Pain exploded through Joshua's skull as the machine began siphoning his neural energy. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay conscious as the weapon powered up. The chamber rumbled, the crystal pulsing faster and brighter. Joshua's vision swam, his thoughts fragmenting. With the last of his strength, Joshua slammed his hand down on the activation panel. The world went white as the doomsday weapon unleashed its awesome power. When Joshua regained consciousness, he found himself in the Alliance medical bay, his mind feeling fractured and disjointed. Tirana lay in the bed next to him, her usually stoic face creased with pain. "We did it," she said weakly. "The Zorgon fleet has been neutralized." Joshua tried to smile, but the effort sent shards of agony through his skull. He knew their victory had come at a terrible cost. As the enormity of their sacrifice sank in, he wondered if they would ever truly recover from what they had endured. Joshua blinked, his vision blurry as he tried to focus on the stark white ceiling of the medical bay. The steady beep of monitors filled the air, a constant reminder of his new reality. He turned his head, wincing at the effort, to see Tirana in the adjacent bed. Her usually composed features were etched with pain. "How?" Joshua's voice cracked, his thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. "How long have we been here?" A doctor approached, his footsteps echoing in the sterile room. "Mr. Evans, Ms. Tirana, how are you feeling today?" Joshua opened his mouth to respond, but the words slipped away. He furrowed his brow, frustration building as he struggled to form a coherent thought. Days blurred together, punctuated by a parade of tests and treatments. Joshua found himself grasping at memories that seemed to crumble like sand through his fingers. He caught snippets of conversations between medical staff, words like irreversible and neural degeneration, sending chills down his spine. One morning, familiar faces appeared at his bedside. Tarek and Speaker stood there, concern etched deep in their Vulcan features. "Joshua," Tarek said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle, "do you recognize us?" Relief washed over Tarek's face, but it was short-lived. As they spoke, Joshua's responses became increasingly disjointed, his thoughts fragmenting mid-sentence. Spiker turned to the attending physician, her voice low. "What is his prognosis?" Joshua caught bits and pieces of the conversation, each word hitting him like a physical blow. He locked eyes with Tirana across the room, seeing his own fear and resignation mirrored in her gaze. That night, as the medical bay fell silent, Joshua made his way to Tirana's bedside. His movements were clumsy, each step a battle against his failing body. Tirana nodded, understanding blooming in her eyes. "Alaska, you're home." The journey to Earth was arduous. Joshua spent much of it lost in a haze of disjointed memories. Faces and places flashed before his eyes, battles fought, lives saved, and moments of quiet beauty amidst the stars. As their shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Joshua turned to Tirana, his eyes clouded with unshed tears. "I've given everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But in the end, I'm alone. No family, no legacy beyond. Tirana reached out, her fingers intertwining with his. "You are not alone, Joshua. I am here." The Alaskan wilderness stretched out before them, vast and untamed. Joshua inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling his lungs. For a moment, the fog in his mind cleared, and he felt a sense of peace wash over him. They made their way to a small cabin nestled in the mountains, far from the reaches of civilization. Days passed in quiet contemplation, punctuated by moments of clarity and long stretches of confusion. One evening, as the northern lights danced across the sky, Joshua fumbled with something at his side. He pulled out the Vulcan ritual blade, its surface gleaming in the ethereal light. "Tirana," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in days, "I want you to have this. It's important. I can't remember why, but I know it is." Tirana accepted the blade, her fingers tracing the intricate designs. "I will cherish it, Joshua, and all that it represents." As winter gave way to spring, Joshua and Tirana ventured further into the wilderness. They left behind the cabin, carrying only what they could on their backs. The forest enveloped them, the sounds of nature drowning out the ever-present static in their minds. One crisp morning, as dawn broke over the mountains, Joshua stopped. He turned to Tirana, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Tirana nodded, a rare smile gracing her lips. "Yes, it is." Hand in hand they walked on, their forms growing smaller against the backdrop of the wilderness. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the last remnants of their extraordinary lives. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.